Welcome to another CEO Wisdom Podcast, VC Edition. We have Jim Beddows with us. Jim is CEO at TDP Data Systems, live from Palo Alto. Jim is an impressive man. Spent 30 years in corporate startups, including Xerox PARC, Microsoft News Corp, Walt Disney, Pepsi, and GE, generating over $3 billion in revenue. So quite an impeccable record there. And Jim is quite the innovator type of person. So we're going to talk about anything from VC to entering new markets to Asia to startups. Today it's going to be an exciting one. You can start your podcast by going to podpire.com. If you have scale and monetization in mind, we can help you do that. So visit podpire.com if you want to start and scale and monetize your podcast. Jim, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and TDP.
Yeah, so thank you for that. I've been a Fortune 50 entrepreneur working across many disparate industry verticals. So that helped me see different patterns and trends cutting across the industry, different business models, different ways to go to market. And I was working with Microsoft Research, doing open innovation across 35 of the largest corporations, North America and Europe. So I was getting involved with proof of feasibilities, proof of concepts, with location-based services. But just stepping back, I had combined an MBA with an MA in East Asian Studies and studied Japanese. And I really wanted to get sent overseas to Japan. So that was driving my career decision-making. So initially out of business school, I went to work for GE when they were going global. Now it's back when Jack Welch was running everything. And they were definitely in one of the top 50, Fortune 50 companies or top 10. And it looked like they were going to send me to Asia, but then I got recruited by PepsiCo. So I went from General Electric and white goods to fast food industry because Pepsi just bought Kentucky Fried Chicken. And they were looking to go global too. So I was involved where all these huge these companies were looking to go global. So KFC was going to send me to Japan. And at the last minute, they sent me to Hong Kong. So I was in Hong Kong and I was responsible for strategy and finance. And we grew KFC's 5 times faster than McDonald's. And the region stretched from Hawaii to the Middle East. And then I got recruited by Disney Interactive. And so they sent me to Tokyo. And so all of a sudden I went from white goods to fast food and services to video games. And Tokyo was like the Hollywood ground central for video games with Nintendo, with Sega. And Sony was just getting the game. And so I was managing director for Disney Interactive. I helped put in place a relationship between Disney and Squaresoft. And that led to the creation of Kingdom Hearts that had to go to Walt Disney's nephew, Roy Disney, who was alive at the time, for approval, creative approval. So this was all in the mid-90s. And then there was a company called Bandai Networks in Japan, in Tokyo. And they came and said they wanted to use Disney content on cell phones with NTT Docomo. And so we did a test with Bandai, and that blew up to be a big business with mobile and Disney content. So I was just going across these different verticals, from services, from manufacturing, into video games, into digital. And mobile was proving to be like the first leg of IoT. So you got PCs, you got mobile devices, handheld devices. So all of a sudden you've got this growing Internet of Things. Then I got brought back from Tokyo to LA by Disney. So I was doing mobile content for them around the world. And then I got recruited, brought into Fox. So 20th Century Fox, we took The Simpsons to mobile. I met with Seth MacFarlane, creator of Family Guy. He said, look, Jim, I'm just a TV guy. It's like, Seth, you have to do digital. He fully embraced it. We took Family Guy to digital for mobile, other properties to mobile, including theatrical properties like Aliens and Predator and stuff like that. And then I went to Microsoft, where I was getting more and more involved with media and technology. And when I went to Microsoft, they had no offering per se on mobile phones for MSN. And it's like, this is now 2005. It's like, okay, you really should have a mobile offering for MSN. We've got MSN on desktop. And so that became a project, and we launched MSN Mobile right when iPhones hit. So this was December 2007, and that blew up to 200 million page views a month and ended up in 19 countries within 12 months. And so I've been seeing these different trends happen. And so mobile, it was probably like a 7-year cycle for it to really blow up. The conversion from like, narrow band to broadband, dial up to all that, that was probably a 7-year conversion. So you're seeing these trends happening kind of slowly in real time that are really predictable. And then from Microsoft, I got more and more involved with open innovation and corporate innovation. And then Xerox PARC brought me in to help them commercialize their research faster. And they were selling their research as point solutions to mid-level R&D directors. I said, you can reframe your research, reframe it. And if you go to a CEO, at the time, the average tenure of a CEO was 4.7 years. And they will tell you immediately within 20 seconds what their pain points they want solved so they can earn out their options. So with that, you can take your point solution approach and turn it into managed services for the C-level. And then I was being asked by corporations, Global 2000 corporations, they were coming to Silicon Valley and they said they couldn't find startups in Silicon Valley. They said they were at the back of the VC bus. They got the venture capital leftovers. They weren't on the VC club. So we looked at all the different ways they're trying to source. And so we looked at the different accelerators, incubators, the different databases, the different consultancies, the different VC networks, and we saw there were data issues with the data. So there were data asymmetry. Some people could see some of the data, other people couldn't. There were data silos, so you'd have a subject matter expert in their own data silo, and they're totally blind to the adjacent data silo. And you have data inaccessibilities. So whenever you put an entry into a database, it gets tagged with a couple keywords. It gets put into that database, it gets indexed. And we're not using those keywords, you can't find it. So it becomes hidden. So I started TDP Data Systems to address these underlying data issues. And so initially we're doing this with corporates and helping them to find, to search, to evaluate, to score and rank startups in real time, combining artificial intelligence and human intelligence. And so we started this TDP, and one of the co-founders he came out of the startup space and he could evaluate 650 startups a month manually. And we turned his heuristic processes into code. So all of a sudden, with a push of a button, we could go through hundreds of thousands of startups and evaluate them based on this type of method of evaluating, scoring, and ranking them. And then what we did was we said, well, 75% of startups, 75% of the patents are licensed by startups. So we pulled in 40 million patents. We initially pulled in 2 million startups, and we pulled in 40 million patent abstracts. And so we started going upstream to where the innovation was flowing from. And then we pulled in 100 million research paper abstracts. So again, going upstream, having global coverage of what's coming through the pipeline for global innovation. And so we were doing this in the US. A lot of it was being done in Japan, where a lot of our big clients were. Then COVID-19 hit, and Japan kind of went into a slumber. They had one of their biggest contractions. So our business was maintained there, but wasn't growing. And he ended up being asked to start working with the federal government. So then we ingested all the data from the federal government, 3,000 federal labs. We ingested 300,000 clinical trials, 40,000 medical device trials. We ingested 31 million rows of import, export, and trade data for scaling around the world. And one of the things we did was we'd ingested 90 years of census data and Bureau of Labor Statistics data. And one of our large corporate clients in the US is a construction company. And they said we missed out on Nashville, Tennessee as a market. We should have been in Nashville 10 years ago. So that took us down the path of starting to model out. We had already developed over 100 algorithms to assess the global pipeline of innovation. And we developed algorithms like build versus buy, or the potential for multi-use case of research, or the commercial impact for research. But then we started getting involved with modeling, with predictive analytics, with algorithms, but also predictive models. So one of the first models we created was what's going to be the next Nashville. So we went across all the geographies of the US and we could evaluate them based on infrastructure, economic, educational pipeline, capital formation, et cetera, tax regimes, which geographies were accelerating or decelerating for market entry. So that was the first kind of model we built. And then the National Science Foundation came out with a call last year worth close to $1 billion, where they basically want to create Silicon Valleys outside Silicon Valley. And so they had specific criteria to compete for that call. And so we modeled that out across 200 metropolitan statistical areas and how they score and rank for that call. And so we're getting more and more involved now with economic development, pinpointing geographies around the world. And I guess the last thing I'll bring up is we've been on calls with the US Department of Agriculture. And they're talking with people in rural communities. And folks on those calls are telling the government officials, they say, look, we don't just want a job. We want the ability to create intergenerational wealth. So we modeled that out across the US. So what geographies are better at allowing for intergenerational wealth creation and what areas are not so good. And that takes into variables like access to child nutrition or education, or ability to generate liquidity or local tax regime, things like that. So that's kind of just what we've seen. is with TDP, we're de-risking decision-making. We're compressing decision-making by 80% or more. And by combining computer and human intelligence, we're offsetting the biases of both types of thinking. So computers can address vast amounts of data and do it objectively. Humans can do neither. But humans can deal with new novel situations, computers can't. So by combining those two types of intelligence, two different ways of thinking, you're offsetting the biases of both. So that's been our approach. And we've seen that with where we're approaching decision making, we've actually created a Swiss Army knife for precision decision making across any industry, geography, use case, just to inform decision making and make it more robust and less risky. So that's just kind of a
So
brief
when will there
overview,
be
Charles.
a chat GPT with your data as backend that you can ask questions? Any plans on deploying that?
So we've evaluated ChatGPT. We've been continue to evaluate it. So TDP's head of analytics asked ChatGPT a research question. And he comes from Max Planck Institute in Germany, and he has a focus on biotechnology. And ChatGPT came back with a research answer with citations. And our TDP guy went out and researched it and found that all the citations were made up. They weren't real. And so he went back and asked ChatGPT about the provenance, where those citations came from. Chat said that it made them up. So we think generative AI can be useful, but you have to be very mindful about how it's being used. And so one of the big things for TDP is the ability to have AI traceability, and that provides AI trustworthiness. So that's a big issue with consumers. It's a big issue with the federal government. It's a big issue with Department of Defense. So that's what we baked into our system. So we'll use ChatGPT and we'll bake it into our platform, but very limited ways on how we use it at this point in time.
Right. Your business model, how much do you charge these Fortune 2000? Is it like per year, like a couple mil per year? How does that work?
So we have worked with out of the box startups. There's some of the biggest Fortune 500 Global 2000 corporations in the federal government. It can range from a one-off project to ongoing, month over month, year over year service. And we can accommodate both. We don't work off of time and material, but we work off of what we deliver. And so we have a list of deliverables at close to 100. And it could range from a simple data list that we generated using our algorithms and the different disparate data sets we pulled in from databases. And as complex as taking partial solutions from startups on the frontier of science and emerging technology and combining them to holistic solutions, what we call ecosystem apps, and then taking those through like proof of feasibility. So there's a whole range of things that you will provide that we're data driven. And then what we do is, we'll just quote based on the deliverables we're generating. We prefer to have ongoing provide our service through a managed service in an ongoing way. And the reason being is what we're really talking about here is process change. So it's a new way of thinking, and it's a new way of working with data. It's a new way of approaching it. It's freeing people up. but that takes time for people. And it's overcoming biases both on the human side and the computer side. So it takes time for people to really understand how novel and how just revolutionary what we're doing is. It takes time, usually about 3 to 4 months where it starts to kick in, where they can see how this can be applied almost in an infinite number of ways. And one of the hard problems TDP solve for is we pull in disparate data streams and data sets and databases. And what we'll do, Charles, you could give us some keywords. Keywords could be anything from podcast, machine learning, media, whatever you give us. And we'll take these different data sets and restructure them. So we unstructure them first, and we restructure them based on the query at hand. So it's a customized database, and then we pull algorithms that are pertinent to those types of data to then score and rank and evaluate what's coming through that pipeline. So that's kind of the foundation of how we generate all these deliverables.
Right. And how does outreach work when you're targeting Fortune 2000 companies? Is it only your connections? Is it organic growth, or do you have a go-to-market strategy there?
It's been word of mouth. We've been referred by Xerox PARC. We've been referred by Stanford University. We've had references corporate to corporate, government to corporate. So it's been organic. We speak at, we have spoken at, for example, Stanford University Summit on disruptive innovation. We've spoken in Cape Town, South Africa, on triple helix and innovation. Well, so we selectively speak. We have spoken in Boston. So it's just really kind of curated at this point. What is kicking in is a network effect. And some of that came out of the National Science Foundation call to create Silicon Valley's outside Silicon Valley. So then we're ending up working with economic development clusters. So that's kind of a network effect that's been happening over the last couple of years.
Interesting. And what will be your focus this year? What would be your top goals as a CEO?
So what we would really like to do is take our managed service and convert it into a platform as a service and develop dashboards that are use case specific. So that's kind of one of our goals. So that way we can open up and democratize access to data to as many people as possible to kind of help improve lives and give them more control over the path they're on with their lives and decision making. So that's one of our goals.
Then what would be the other goals? Is that the main one? And what about your personal goals? How do you make sure that you always show up to work in 100% state as a human being?
Well, it's just the things we're trying to solve for is empowering and motivating. So, we deal from use cases that stretch from how can we help accelerate the drug discovery, development, and manufacturing of cancer drugs, oncology drugs? How do we help address homelessness or mental health? Or how do we help address energy storage and climate change? How do we help decarbonize whole industries like automobile manufacturing, both the processes and components themselves? So the things we're working on are top of mind and cutting edge. and have the power to create great positive global impact. And what we do is we work off of what we call addressable pain points. So addressable pain point is something that you can put a market size on. So if it gets solved, there's money on the table to be involved. So that's kind of our approach with how we approach the market and what we're trying to solve for.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for showing up today. Where can people find out more about you?
So the website for TDP is www.decisionplatform.io. And you're happy to go there. It's kind of opaque on purpose. We put the website up in 2016. I haven't changed it since. There's a link there if you want to get in touch with TDP sales. We're happy to give a demo of what we do and go into further use cases.